Hey, welcome to the Birth Boss podcast. I'm your host, Jodi Congdon, and I have with me the lovely Leslie Owens. I will let Leslie intro herself because I feel like I will not do you justice. But I connected with Leslie. We were just chatting. We had never met before, and we have a friend in common. But I met her in my membership community, Birth Boss Society, and she came in and just as we met and started chatting and through different things in the community, we have a very, very similar path. And one of the things that I always love with other doulas and business owners, and you're in the lactation space, is when they take their own experience and they create something that grows their business. So before we really dive into that, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. So, Leslie Owens, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we will get into your sort of path in your program.
All righty. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Leslie Owens. I am a registered nurse in an IBCLC in the West Georgia area, just outside of Atlanta. And I have a private practice here. My roots before I became a lactation consultant was mother baby and labor and delivery nursing, was kind of on a path to midwifery, but lactation support got me a chokehold, and I haven't looked back since I
Derailed you a bit.
on it. Yeah. And then now I'm like too old and tired to be on call. So it's like, this is my thing and this is what I'll be doing, I'm sure, until I retire. So love what I do. I have the private practice, and then now I'm also training other professionals to become IBCLCs.
And I hear all over the place how difficult it is to, I think, a little easier when you're an RN, but for the average person or doula, it feels very difficult to pick a path and start and get your hours and take your courses. And I think besides being difficult, it feels like quite an investment. And it's so, a lot of people feel like they can't do it. And what I feel like, why I feel so connected to you, is how most people feel about the IBCLC path. I felt very much the same when I decided I wanted to take my solo business and move into an agency model. And kind of like we talked about, it's not easy because you don't know what you don't know, and you're only going off like common sense, right?
Yeah.
And reading and here and there stuff, and you kind of figure it out, and it's a lot of trial and error. And I always say it's not wasted time and money, it's extra time and money spent.
Oh,
But
good.
you obviously accomplished it. I own an agency. But we took that knowledge and extra years and extra money and turned that into something that is helpful for our community and our audience and our colleagues. So, kind of talk a little bit about your program. And I feel like everyone listening, knows mine. So they're going to be like, oh my God, it's the exact same thing. Except Leslie's is, lactation, and Jodi's is agency. But kind of tell us how that came about, how you decided to turn that into not only like helping the community, but also it's extra revenue for you. It grows your business. It brings a whole new audience, in front of you. And then, you're working with the parent community, right? You're working with the professional community. So you sort of have like, your eyes and ears on everything.
Well, I'm very ADD, so I like to do a little bit of everything, and it keeps it very interesting. So I think that the way that it happened was, I just hear the question all the time, and I see it in the groups. When you're in the online space, as far as like, how do you become a lactation consultant? And I feel like there's a lot of misinformation out there. People think you have to be a nurse,
Yep.
or and things like that, but you actually don't. So I think that I want people to know that it's very doable. There's more than one pathway to get there, and I've kind of streamlined and kind of made my own unique, um, sort of personalized pathway for people who want to do it, to be able to do it, for it to feel attainable and achievable, and to do it in a realistic timeline.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's also something that people think would take them years and years to do.
Oh,
Um,
I thought that for sure.
like 5 years, is how long they give you to take the exam once you start your hours, and a lot of people take 5 years. But I've kind of found a way, my own way to facilitate for those who are passionate about it to be able to do it. We need more lactation consultants. There's not enough,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
then like it also coincides, and I think I really tuned into birth workers and doulas because like you're already serving moms. We're
Right.
already working with moms. We're already passionate about that. That's already our niche, right? So that just kind of like is icing on the cake, and it's something that they kind of like go well together. They go together like peanut butter and jelly. Really, I always feel like doulas and
Mhm.
lactation like we're like this, right? Because we very much complement each other. And even myself, I dabble in a little bit of postpartum doula work in conjunction with my lactation. So I just want people to feel like, okay, I can do this if they want to do it, and I can show them the way that they can do it in a very reasonable amount of time, and without spending years in college or
Mhm.
tons and tons of money. And it thrills me, and the feedback that I've gotten so far from the program is it's been like it's a need. And once I tell people how it works and they realize it, they're excited and they're kind of like on board. Once we iron out a few details, they're like, okay, I'm in, because it's facilitating a way for them where there was a barrier before.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think too, like birth workers in general, we like take one training. It could be like, birth or postpartum. And then we're like, what else can we do? Like, how else can we take care of new families? So now we're doing lactation. And then we love lactation. So, I am a CLE trainer. So that's 24-hour course.
Mhm.
They love it. What can they do, deeper in lactation? And so then, the CLE, you get credit towards, your IBCLC, but from there it's like what else, what's next, give me the checklist. And then they look on the website, which I find like so confusing, and it's like,
Crazy.
am I pathway 1, 2, or 3, like am I 300 hours, 500, or 1,000, like
Mhm.
then you're calling like your college and getting your transcripts only to realize they've expired. And it's like at that point you're like, I can't, like I'm done, and it's a shame because, and I've even heard that the exam is more difficult than the NCLEX nursing exam. um People are already feeling like it's not attainable, and without and your program saying, what, no, it is attainable, and like here is a very, organized way that you can go about it. And like I'm a person who needs hand holding. I am not afraid to admit it. I am very much a person who needs someone to say, okay, here's where you are, here's the next step,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
there's the, because I'm unorganized, so that's the first thing, and I get bent out of shape really quickly. Like I get flustered really quickly, and I'm like, nope, I'm done. But if it's like very clear what the path is, and someone is helping me figure out, where I am and where I want to be and what looks like, it fits my life in the middle. I'm willing to dedicate the time and the money and all of that. And you've captured that piece like so beautifully. And we do need more lactation support. I mean, badly.
Yeah, the rates of breastfeeding across the country, prove that.
Oh, they're horrendous. And it's, there's definitely pockets of the country that are like doing okay, but
Mhm.
it's like initiation rates are great, but then like, when you get to 3 months, it's like this,
Yeah. Once they go
right
back to
down.
work and all that. And then, I'm a firm believer in care for breastfeeding. Like, even I love those visits. Sometimes I'm just like their little extra
Yeah.
person who's giving them telling them that they can do it and encouraging them. Some of my clients joke and say that I'm cheaper than therapy. So sometimes it's they're doing okay, but they just need that extra encouragement, and they keep coming back, and we do weight checks and we talk about all the things, and they vent and they get it all out, and it's just like an extra person on as part of their birth team, just similar to how a doula is.
And it's just nice because, even the well visits, it's someone just saying, you're doing a good job. And there's not enough people and not enough like positive reinforcement in early parenting. So for you to come over to someone's house and for you to see them, being successful, and just tell them that they're being successful. And, I think at least for me, most of our clients, they set out to breastfeed, but in the same sentence, and this, I want to spend the rest of the conversation, like, with these prospective clients, figuring out why they say this, but they say, I'm not dead set on it. Like, I know it's difficult. I know anything, can happen. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
not committing myself. Like, if it goes
Mm-hmm.
great, great. If it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't, no pressure.
I knew you were
And
going to say that.
I'm
Yep.
like,
That's exactly
why are you haven't even had a baby yet. Why are you already psyching yourself out? You're already
it.
saying, you know what? If it's easy, fine. If there's any like bumps in the road, and there's always bumps in the road,
Mhm.
I'm okay with formula, or I'm okay with, plan B or C. And it's like,
Mhm.
no, like you should have all these people in your life, and all these, people even on social media saying,
Mhm.
it's not always easy, but like, here's who I reached out to, or it is doable. Here's, my thought on it. Or, but you just get like, keep trying in the hospital, keep trying in the hospital, and people end up with a nipple shield. Like,
Yeah.
there's not enough positive reinforcement, and we just hear the worst of the worst. And
Mhm.
I talk about this, on the podcast, because it's really the only time that, like, I do get to say it. But like, I had beautiful births. I had a hospital birth and 2 home births, and they were like enjoyable and straightforward and easy. And my breastfeeding experiences were wonderful. But like, nobody ever hears these stories, because I'm always on the heels of someone telling a terrible one.
Yeah.
And there's no way you can follow that up with like, I'm so sorry to hear that, but mine was amazing. Like,
Yeah.
there's no room for that. So there needs to be more space for positivity.
And that seed has been planted, sometimes that just by society. And like you said, you hear the horror stories. All you have to do is mention the word breastfeeding. It's like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't breastfeed because, you know,
Yep.
kind of like trauma dumping, like I can't, like I didn't make enough. And a lot of times once you dive into those conversations a little bit deeper, and you learn that a lot of times, there were some things early on, that could have went differently if they had good support.
It's always lack of support. And it's
Mhm.
interesting because, what I hear the most is it didn't work out. Like, what part of it didn't work out? Was
Mhm.
it, you know, the education? Was it the support? Was it, that you really just didn't make any milk? Because that's, the true percentage of people who actually can't is much less than the number of people I know that it didn't work out for. So
It's very much
it
like most
always
time it's
comes back
perceived.
to lack of support. And we talk a lot about prenatal education in, every class that I teach for doulas, or new families. And it really does come back to, early and often. It's learning about it, in a positive way, but not just logistics, like management skills, like everything else in life. How do you manage your time? Like, how do you manage the stress? And it is stressful sometimes, but it's manageable if you have someone, who's out there being like, hold my hand, I'll help you.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it, and I mean, it's so rewarding to be able to do that. And when you hear like like if it wasn't for you, I would have quit. That like
Mm-hmm.
you hear that all the time, and
Yep.
it's very like rewarding just to know that you impact their journey in that way.
Yeah.
Like birth is a short period of time, it's a day, but like your whole postpartum experience. And think about the trauma that people carry when it didn't work out. And sometimes it's like
Yep.
they're done with it, they move on, but then they have regret when they look back on it, and they're sad about it that it didn't work out, or or whatever, for whatever
Mm-hmm.
reason. And sometimes it would just be nice if we could step in earlier and be
Yes.
able to help. And a lot of times it was like a perceived, I didn't make enough, that type of
Mm-hmm.
thing. But if they really would have had good support, they would have known that it's TikTok is making them think they're not making
Yep.
enough, but they were making enough.
And so it's there's two pieces of that I want to, respond to. The first one is, it's not only the person who's breastfeeding that gets, the benefit of the success, but also knowing that it's so amazing for their body, it's so amazing for their baby. It's that next generation of healthier children that become healthier adults. And there's a whole host of benefits, for the babies that are breastfed, that the general public does not even know about.
Yeah, I just
Um,
had that conversation before we got on this call with a friend of mine, and it was like a physician that was responding, and the whole all that fed is best and all that stuff. And I was like, wow, like they don't have that same energy about obese. Like we could prevent obesity. What they harp
Hmm.
on it, right? They never care to hurt our feelings about what we weigh,
Yeah.
So, but they're just like, no, fat is best, fat is best. Formula's fine. And that kind of, if you dig deeper, that goes into most physicians we're not able really to breastfeed because their schedules and things, right?
Yep.
So they carry that bias. And so unfortunately, it's just that bias carries on, and but we can actually prevent some of this obesity and prevent a lot of these health issues later in life, and
Yeah.
the diabetes and the asthma and the allergies and all these things. And for the breastfeeding mother or person, it's like lifelong health benefits.
Yes.
Probably the reason I'm probably not diabetic now is because I breastfed for all these years.
Yeah.
you know?
I did. So when I got pregnant with my middle one, and I got pregnant, very quickly with my third one, years had gone by where I was either pregnant or breastfeeding, then pregnant again and breastfeeding. And so you can't have mammograms, can't do any of those things. So I have such a crazy family history. I ended up seeing a breast specialist, and
Mhm.
they ask you 1,000 questions and they figure out the percentage that, you will or will not have cancer, blah, blah, blah. And at the end, she said, this is the number, the percent, whatever. And I felt really good about it. And she said, but this doesn't take into consideration the number of, months or years that you have
Mhm.
breastfed. So like take this number, which I was very happy with,
Mhm.
and bring it down. And
Yeah.
I was like, twofold, super excited, but I was like, how could it be, what year was it? Maybe 2017. I'm like, it's 2017. Like, how could you not have this now built into this calculation? You know it. You're saying it to me. I know it. But
Mhm.
so it wasn't even like in, the questionnaire or whatever, but
Mhm.
it's a tremendous health benefit for all of those cancers, for people who breastfeed. And as a person whose family members have had all of it, um, that, I mean, that was a driver for sure and a benefit.
Same.
Um,
Same.
yeah. So there's so much that we don't know, or the general breastfeeding public, um, doesn't know. And how do we get there? We're derailing a bit. I said to Leslie earlier, I said, the sweet spot for, like, this podcast is like 20 or 25 minutes, but like usually when I have a guest, it ends up being like 45 or 50 minutes because we just start talking about all the things, and
There's so much more to talk about.
so much more to talk about. Um, but I want to talk a little more about your program. What does it look like for a time commitment for someone, and who is taking the program? Like, who's the ideal student, or the ideal, participant in this program?
I have a little bit of everything in there. There's doulas in there, several doulas. There's a couple of nurses that don't already work with moms and babies, so they need a way to get clinical hours.
Yep.
There are just moms who are just passionate about breastfeeding because they breastfed their own children, and they said they would just love to do this. And so a little bit like those are all different people, but they
Hmm.
but they all have the one thing in common, that they're just passionate about breastfeeding support, and they would do it if it was accessible to them. And
Hmm.
I've done this before, like even in some of the doula groups, like who would do this if it was accessible, and like everybody's like me, 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 me.
Everybody.
And
Yep.
so like I'm like, wow, this is a need. Like it's really a need. So I just it tickles me to death that I've been able to simplify it a little bit for them. And the feedback I've gotten is just like, wow, like this is something that I didn't think I would ever be able to do, and I'm doing it.
Hmm.
And some of my people will test this year in the fall. Some will test in next spring, and that's just when we only start in November.
So
And so
it
I
is.
facilitate different ways for them to get their hours. And then, they're also getting mentorship from me. That's one of the kind of downfalls of Pathway One is there's no real like oversight or mentorship. And
Hmm.
so it's kind of wild, wild west. You're kind of teaching yourself, but like I'm offering what it lacks, and I'm providing that. I've been doing this for 10 years. I can tell I've taken all the continuing education, everything that I can do. I'm always continuing to learn and grow, and I'm
Hmm.
pouring that into them. And we do case studies all the time, and they're learning and they're feeling more confident and comfortable with it. And it's beautiful just to watch them evolve and like start chipping away at their goals.
Yeah. And it's like invaluable to have like a lifeline. Like it is like to have someone that you can just even text or message or
Mhm.
email and say, I'm stuck on this. I have a question. And it
Mhm.
makes me think of, someone who is like a brand new, parent and they're breastfeeding. Nothing ever goes wrong at noon. It goes wrong at midnight, right?
Yeah.
And, I always used to say to my clients, if you need something, like if it cannot be resolved and it cannot wait till morning, call me. I don't care what time it is. And just having like someone say that to you and knowing that you can call them,
Mhm.
nothing feels like that, you need to do it at 3 o'clock in the morning. And there have been very few times where someone has called me with what they think is like, an emergency. And
Mhm.
just having someone hear them say it out loud, they're like, okay, like I know this. I can do this now. But when you panic because you don't have, someone to reach out to, it's the worst. And it
Mhm.
stops you from moving to that next step. And like you're that lifeline for these, people who are passionate about breastfeeding. Like they're begging to be out there helping new families. And it's like, someone's just holding like their hand up and being like, nope, sorry, like, you can't get through. And you're like, nope, open the gate.
Yes, that's what
You can
burns
get
me
through.
up. That's what bothers me is it's the red tape,
Yep.
and it's kind of like the elitist, like the this elite thing, and that's ridiculous. Like, it needs to be more accessible, not less accessible,
Yep.
and we need all types of people to from all different backgrounds to support moms. So, why is it so secretive? Why is it so like, you have to put the pieces of the puzzle together, by
Mhm.
yourself and figure it out and hope that you're doing it right.
Yep.
Whereas I can kind of walk them through that. I'm giving them, like you said, a lifeline. I was like, okay, you can do pathway one. Anybody can. People think you have to be a nurse or a healthcare
Mhm.
worker. You don't. You have to be one of the peer support organizations to do pathway one, and I am one of those. So that's what allows them to train under me. And then the cool thing too that they love is they're able to count some of their hours that we're already working with moms, helping with breastfeeding. Some of those hours count when because they're doing it through my organization.
Mhm.
So that's amazing. So some of the time that they're already working, the same way as a nurse who's working labor delivery or mother baby will be able to count a
Mhm.
percentage of their hours. Doulas can do that too.
But I think the average person probably would not know that.
No, they
Like,
wouldn't.
so it's like, again, you don't know what you don't know. And I love that, besides helping your new families and besides helping these professionals, do the path of IBCLC, um, you're also creating some extra income. And it's a lot of it is can be categorized as passive income, for your own business and your own family and your own, lifestyle. Who doesn't love, some extra free time
Yeah.
that you don't get when you're always working, you
Yeah.
know, hourly for a certain rate? And, it's the doula way. And, even lactation, if you're meeting with clients or
Mhm.
patients all the time,
Yeah.
you're only getting paid for the time that you're sitting with them. And, if you're looking at a certain number for your weekly or monthly income, you have to say, okay, then it needs to be 40 hours or 50 hours or 60 hours or whatever it is.
Mhm.
Because, I mean, you can't just go wild and charge whatever you want. There is a market value to it. And um, so it allows you to still work with families, right? Still do what you love, still help, people become IBCLCs, but in a way that it's a one to many offer. It's
Mhm.
your offer, and it can be anybody who wants to take it. There could be 100 people going through your program, and you're not necessarily breaking your back
Mhm.
to help everyone and to quote unquote care for everyone.
Mhm.
Um, and that's a beautiful thing. That's something that a lot of birth professional businesses are missing, and they can't figure out how to get ahead, and they can't figure out how to grow their business. They don't have any offers that are scalable, and your program is absolutely scalable. And you know I love to focus on that piece. So we're shifting from breastfeeding, and we're moving into the business side of this, and it's half business, half personal. because it grows your business, it grows your bank account for sure. It makes you more credible, right, to the general public. And now that you are, I mean, working with clients, especially with lactation, this doesn't really work with postpartum care, but you could have clients across the country, right? You could,
Mhm.
do your consults virtually.
Yeah, I
So
do
you
that.
definitely could do that. But,
Mhm.
with your program, you're reaching the entire nation. I mean, the world. I mean, you could reach the world, right? So anyone has access to you and your program and your knowledge and your expertise.
Yeah,
Incredible.
it's been like you said, as far as it can become a little bit passive. It's like, okay, like it was a lot of work building it out,
Mm-hmm.
and so, but like it's built out now, and it's just evolving, and now that we're at that stage, it like you said, there's many people that want to come through, can come through, and it's not too much more work on my end,
Yep.
no matter how many people enroll.
And with your 4-year-old twins requiring a lot of your time and
Yeah.
energy, um,
Just a
they're
little
probably
tiny.
like, thanks, mom. Thanks for having
Oh
passive
yeah.
income so you can spend more time with us.
And that's that's really what it's all about. They'll
Yep.
go to kindergarten, and I already do my consults now, like while they're at school. I already have that flexibility. That's the beautiful thing about working
Yep.
lactation is you can't control your schedule. So I take them to school every day. I do my consults while they're at school. I pick them up from school, pick up my teenager from school, and we have our nice slow evenings. And that's how I operate my lactation piece. I decide when I'm off or not. And then now adding this into the equation
Yep.
just makes it that much more beautiful, because you know it's starting to give me a little bit more time freedom,
Yep.
and a little bit more flexibility as far as how much time I have, and who knows, like for once maybe I can like take on like a hobby or something, like, oh, what did I used to like to do once upon a time. Maybe
Yep.
I can read
Yep.
a book, maybe I can maybe I can do something else besides always grinding to get here and there and driving all over Atlanta to home visits all the time. I've closed, this has allowed me to close in my travel radius,
Yep.
and I'm transitioning to that, and that's all because this program's giving me like another avenue of my business.
And it makes a huge difference. This is something I say to clients sometimes, prospective clients, and I also say it to people that I'm helping build their agencies. The financial investment into birth doula care, postpartum care, or building your business, you spend that and you end up making it back, right?
Mhm.
um
Yeah.
if you spend too much time working or doing things that don't you know that don't light you up personally or aren't with your family, you don't ever get that time back. And
No, you
how
don't.
old how old's your oldest?
So he's about to be 16, like in a week.
So he's a junior,
He's a sophomore.
sophomore. Okay, so my daughter's 17. She's going to be 18 in June, and she's a senior. So I look back at you know just the last couple of years, and I can honestly say I don't have any regret that I wasn't around and that I didn't spend enough time dedicated to them, the three of my girls, but especially my oldest, because she's gonna be gone in the fall,
Yeah.
and not gone in the sense of like never coming home, but um it's
Yeah, but
definitely gonna
it's
be different. And I feel like really incredible that I gave her all that time, and I gave her that time and didn't stretch myself thin, because we need to work, and we need to make money. We all have a mortgage and bills, and groceries are like ridiculous. um you don't get that time back, so you have to be very intentional now about how you spend it. And you're like me, we have an older one and we have little ones,
Mhm.
so we have ample time now before anyone is like going off to college after the first one. But I love to be able to be available for drop off and for pickup,
Yeah,
or to
I
volunteer
enjoy that
in
too.
the library if I want to
Yes.
or not. I coach cheer,
Yeah,
and
that's amazing.
I can meet a friend for coffee if I want to. I can make my schedule however I want to. And I have it set where, 3 days are my agency days. And then I have a CEO day to work on my business. And Friday, if everything works out, is a long weekend. It's usually like my catch all day for things that like, I sort of missed or popped up during the week. But there's flexibility to all of it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it's
my
we're very
oldest
lucky.
son,
We're very blessed to be able to build a business where that can be, our focus.
I remember when my oldest was younger, because I mean, it seems like, yeah, you know how fast they grow up. It seems like
Hmm.
yesterday he was the size of the twins, right? And it's like I was doing nursing still back then, and on the floor 12-hour shifts and everything. He used to have to spend the night at my mom's
Yeah.
and stuff like that, just so I could work everything out. And it is different, and I love the time I'm able to spend with the boys. And it's just one of those like stages we're in where it's like I just want to slow down. I want to savor it. I
Yep.
know how fast they grow up, and right now I'm in a space where I'm able to do that.
Yeah, I did the exact same thing. I worked as a postpartum doula overnight, and my oldest stayed at my dad's house.
Hmm.
And so you get home in the morning and you get them dressed, and then they're off to school. So like you
Hmm.
weren't there at night, you're not with them during the day,
Yeah.
and it wears on you. I mean,
Right.
not even like the exhaustion of actually like, being on your feet and working, but
Hmm.
the guilt. I
Yeah.
mean, the guilt is real for
Yeah.
sure.
Being
And
on for
then
that long.
never mind like the time you're not spending, with your family, forget about yourself. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
there's
Like a shell of a person.
yeah, like the self-care, it's not even like a thought. Like
At
you're
all.
like the last. And here we are all day long saying, take care of yourself
Take care of
first,
yourself.
prioritize yourself, put your oxygen mask on first. And we're eating like cereal over the sink,
The crust of
like
their sandwiches.
yeah, yeah. And that's not how it should be. Um
No.
we want to be doing this for a long time. I don't want anyone to go back to their 9 to 5 or for it not to work out because they just couldn't configure things in a way that brought in revenue and didn't have them working 40, 50, 60 hours a week.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, like, and that does a lot. Like, I think having multiple facets of your business is what gives you that flexibility when you can, like, it doesn't just come from one area. And I think it prevents burnout, right?
Yeah,
Because I'm able to give 100% and not be burned out because, I wouldn't have to take on quite as many. And it's like you do a little bit of this, and when you go, you pour it all in. When
yeah,
when you go to those postpartum shifts, you're giving your all because you're not burned out because you've been doing it every day for
yeah.
weeks.
And you can go heavier on different parts. Like,
Hmm.
if let's say, God forbid, you broke your leg. So now you're not doing these in-person, postpartum visits, but like you have your virtual lactation visits and you have your IBCLC program. So now
Hmm.
you're, taking time off for a minute from like the in-person stuff, but you still have a full load of things and a full paycheck coming in from the other things. So you can move and shift a bit to what either like feels good for you at that moment or fits your lifestyle. The summers when your kids are not
Oh
in
yeah.
school, I try to take it really light. I try to have little to no commitments that I can't move around because I don't want to be in front of the computer because that means they are like in front of some screen or they're home. I want them outside, but they can't go outside by themselves. And
Hmm.
it's I want to have that flexibility, and I definitely do. um yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, and then sometimes I'll even do, you can combine the two at the same time. I've done concierge type packages where there'll be lactation, and then their insurance will cover the lactation portion, then they're still getting, and I'll get an hourly rate for the postpartum doula part.
Hmm.
And that, actually helps you be able to make more income doing what you had already been doing anyway.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's not, you don't have to have all these kind of side hustles and things
Hmm.
like that. Everything is relevant to, your passion and, the bigger picture. But the next thing for you, you should move into an agency model for your private practice. You're getting all these IBCLCs,
Hmm.
trained and ready to go. They take the test, they pass, and then
Yeah.
they come right back to you
Yeah.
and you
I'm
contract
really
them out.
considering that because that's the cool thing is one of the ways that they get clinical hours is through we have a warm line, and parents can call the warm line and get advice. And then one of the intake questions is like, do you want to see lactation consultant if your insurance covers it? And they can say yes. And then that also feeds into the practice.
Yes.
And then we have a drop-in clinic, a virtual drop-in clinic, and they also can, same thing. So if that feeds into the practice, well, eventually that's going to be more consults than I can take. And like you said, that can very well go into an agency model because it's going to start feeding me, more and more consults as it
Mhm.
grows. And then that's going to be more than I can do or want to do. And
Yeah.
then, like
And
you said, there's contractors.
the worst thing is to say no to your community. Like the
Hmm.
worst thing is to say to someone who, is having some trouble breastfeeding, and you have to say, like, I just can't add one more, or, it's a Monday and you say, I can see you Friday. That's like an
Hmm.
eternity,
Yeah, it
four
is when you're
days.
struggling. Hmm.
Yes. Yes. That is the make or break where they're going to say, you know what, I can't anymore, and we don't want that. That is like the opposite of what we want. We just want to help everyone, because it's getting over, like, kind of that those few bumps in the road in the beginning, and then you, like, sail into the sunset, the breastfeeding sunset.
Yeah,
But
the
it's
breastfeeding sunset.
those little bumps in the road in the beginning. At any given time, someone can be like, I can't, this is too much for me, I can't. So it's logistics, but it's also someone just saying, you got this, you can do this, here's some time management, tips and tricks, or here's something that worked great for me or worked great for, a lot of my clients. And you don't know what you don't know, and it's easy. You're exhausted, you're sore. I mean, it's such a vulnerable time anyway. Like, let's pile one more thing on a new mom.
Yeah, I
So you're
agree.
like the hero, swoop in with your boob cape.
Yeah, your boob with your cape with the boob on it.
Yes.
It's
um
really great. It's really great. It's like very fulfilling.
Very
For
fulfilling.
me.
And you only get one shot here, so you want to do it right.
Hmm.
And the other part of that is, having a business like this allows you to, like you said, not stop your hobbies and do things that you love. And we were just talking about the Birth Boss CEO Summit. It's in Boston in April. Travel for these things that are education and networking. And you don't have to say, to a client, oh, I have to take this week off. And you don't have to worry about, the time that you're taking off and traveling, that you're not, getting a paycheck. It just gives you flexibility. And I mean, you have 3 kids, I have 3 kids. Kids aren't cheap. They're eventually, possibly going to go to college. Like, I started saving for that years ago. I want to retire. I don't want to be doing this when I'm, 60. I don't want to be doing this when I'm
Right,
60. So
right.
what does that look
Definitely
like
want that.
in terms of, you know, investing some of the money coming in, into those future buckets? And one of the things too, and then, I'm going to wrap this up here, because I want to make sure everyone has, people are listening and they're like, get to the link. Like, how can we reach out? Um, what was I going to say? Retirement. Oh, yes. I know what I was going to say. This is something nobody thinks about, but we start these businesses, we get excited, we're working, we grow a little bit, we have some passive income coming in, we have offers that we can scale, and we're killing it, we're doing great. And we never think of, like, what does that look like when we don't want to do this anymore? Like, what happens to our business that we spent years and money and sweat and tears and energy
Yeah.
building, not only the actual business, but like your reputation, your brand, your program, your everything. You have something so valuable. Do you give it to, is it a legacy for your kids? I mean, do you sell it? And the answer could be maybe to both, but you're building something that is extremely valuable. So keeping that in the back of your mind as you grow, it's very exciting to have something, that in the future someone can buy from you or take over, and knowing that you don't have to give that up. You don't have to stop this program. You don't have to stop caring for the community, because you have people who are now taking it over, and they're doing it as you.
That's one of the things I like about you. And actually, I remember from the birth worker retreat last year in Tampa. So, is that you really think about those things that other people don't really ever bring up. And that
Mhm.
is like such a valid point. Because
Yeah.
yeah, what do you don't think that far ahead, but yes, we should.
Right. I mean, you work so hard to do this, and there should be like, you know, the frosting on the cake is, you want to make sure that you're doing it right. So when it does come time to, take a step back, you have something very valuable to sell or to, give or, stay in a little bit while someone else runs it. I mean, there's so many options, but just knowing your intent and having some sort of outline of an exit strategy
Hmm.
just feels really good. It feels
It does.
like, you know, planning always feels good, right? But it feels like you're moving towards something.
Yeah, it does. It is. Those are. It's exciting to start. Actually feeling like that those things are relevant.
They are.
Sometimes when we're first starting out, it doesn't really feel like it's really even relevant until you get to a certain point.
Yeah.
Until you really get your momentum going.
Well, I think we just forget about those business bits and pieces.
Yeah.
We're focused on like marketing and social media, and I'm like,
Yeah.
there's so much more like
Yeah.
to think about. And yeah, I think you have to get to this like certain level to be able to say like, okay, the marketing and social media feels like something that I've been doing, and my reputation is here, and my brand is known. How can I elevate the next piece of it? And um, that feels like the purpose of something like the CEO Summit. It's like level up thinking, level up planning. You're already established, you already have enough clients, like you're overbooked. What's next? Like, what is next on the map? Um, and there's always going to be something. There's always going to be something to do and something to build and something to worry about. But like, there are things that you're doing and building and worrying about for your future.
Yeah. I think that's your secret sauce because you bring up those things and they are important. And I think also people get overwhelmed by like, okay, yeah, it matters, but like I don't know anything about that.
Yeah.
So that's the beauty also of the membership is like getting to learn those things from you because first generation entrepreneur, like don't know
Mhm.
nothing, winging it. So being able to learn from someone who's done it before already is amazing. So I love the opportunity, to get to learn from you.
Oh, thank you. It's kind of funny you say that. My dad was a teacher, and I graduated college with a degree in hotel and restaurant management, and he was like, "Can you just stick with one thing? Like, you went to college, like just decide on one thing and do it." And I'm like, that's not me. Like I'm still, even like after college and after my first and second and third job, like I'm still figuring out what I want to do with this. And like, it's not this, it's not this, it's not this. Well, what is it? I don't know yet. And I finally, figured it out, and here I am. But it's just interesting. I think, our parents had one job, one career, and just
Yeah.
did that.
It's different. It's different. Well, we're in a different time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, so different, but it's incredible.
It
Like
is.
we're
What a time to be
so
alive.
blessed. Yeah.
What a time to be
Yeah.
alive.
I mean, it's the struggle is worth all of it, is worth, the
Absolutely.
end. Um, all right. Are your kids in bed?
No, I had my husband take them and the teenager to the gym, so they'll
Oh,
be home soon.
yeah. My kids are not either. They're probably
But
like,
I've had some nice. I had a
they're
nice little
listening.
quiet chat with you. It's been nice. Yeah,
They're always
they'll probably
listening for
start
me to
going
be
in
like,
here
okay, wrap it up, bye. And then they like, come flooding down the stairs. Um,
soon.
But yeah, I will make sure everyone has all of your information, ways they can get in touch with you, questions about your program. Um, and so usually people like when I'll give links to, guests, things like that. People
Mhm.
always are interested in that, but then they always have questions like more specific questions about like your journey. Like they'll hear something that you said and they'll be like, that's me. Like that's where I am, or that's where I was stuck. So you'll get some like random DMs. Like I heard you on the Birth Boss podcast, and like, you said this about this, and that's where I am. Tell me how you got to the next step. And it's so nice because I love more than anything like these bits and pieces of connection, like how when I met you I didn't know anything about you, and here we are, like our
Yeah,
families are like similar, our
yeah, it's so
journeys are
crazy.
similar, and people love that feeling like someone else out there was exactly where they are, but now they're exactly where they want to be.
Yeah.
And that feels like it's like, confetti. It's
Absolutely.
like you can celebrate because someone got there, and like now they're going to help me get there too. And that's you for the IBCLCs.
It's about, it's, like that. Like being able you being what you are, right? Like you being that for me, and then me being that for them. That's very powerful, right?
Yeah, yeah. It just and they'll be that for someone else.
Exactly.
It,
So
it,
like
it will never
we
stop.
all pass the baton. We all,
Yeah,
give an arm up to the next person. That's
yeah,
beautiful.
yeah. It's like one long relay race. All right, you're amazing. We're at the 46-minute mark, so I knew that
Yay, we did
25
it.
minutes, no way. I will make sure everyone has Leslie's information and all the things, the links. And yeah, I mean, it's exciting. And 20 minutes ago, people were like, seriously, like, stop talking. Like, give me the link. People are always so excited. I don't think I've had anyone on as an IBCLC or as like an IBCLC mentor now that I think about it. So people have been waiting for this for a long time. And I'm almost at my 100th episode. So
Yeah, that's amazing. I was looking back like, wow, you've been doing this for a minute.
yeah, I try to put it out every week, but there are some weeks where I'm like, oh, I can't. Like but do it next week. Like during December, I was like, there's no way, there's no possible way that I'm
It's the
getting.
holidays.
And I'm
It is
such the type
okay.
of person where, people say this all the time about social media, like, reels and things like that. They're like, take one day and just batch like 40 videos and like change your shirt a couple of times. Like, that is not me. I wake up and have an idea. Like, I can't record 42 podcast episodes and have them like on a queue. Like,
Yes.
because something pops up and I'm like, oh, that doesn't fit for this week, or that's not what I want to talk about. And when's your next important stuff? I can't believe you didn't mention this. When is the next launch?
So my next launch is coming right up. It
Yeah.
is February 22nd will be when the doors open, and we're gonna start the next cohort in the first week of March.
So it's a hustle. This is perfect timing. See,
It
that's why I
is.
can't batch anything. That's why I can't batch.
Exactly. See, it was meant to be. I'm glad there was space for me.
Yes. All right, Leslie, you're amazing. You guys,
Very welcome.
keep being bosses and have a wonderful rest of your evening.